He wasn't my father, but he was still part of me.
I've been obsessed with The Lion King since I was a kid, but something about Kovu's backstory never made sense to me. If he was truly Scar's son, why didn't the movie just come out and say it? That question led me down a rabbit hole of research that completely changed how I see this Disney sequel. My thorough investigation through films, animator insights, and production notes revealed a startling truth about Kovu's parentage. The evidence suggests an entirely different father, one that transforms our understanding of The Lion King 2, and explains Disney's careful avoidance of explicitly naming Kovu's father. When we first meet Kovu in The Lion King 2, Simba's Pride, it's almost impossible not to make the connection to Scar immediately. Disney practically screams it at us through their character design. Look at Kovu's fur, that dark brown coat, those piercing green eyes that glow with intensity, and the facial structure that makes them virtual doppelgangers. And later, when Kovu gets that scar over his eye during the movie, come on. Disney creates a visual breadcrumb trail, leading viewers directly to the assumption of paternity without explicitly stating it. Even his name, Kovu, will sound suspiciously similar to Scar, like a junior version of the notorious villain. These similarities are deliberate artistic choices. The animators crafted Kovu to be seen as Scar's direct descendant, the next in line to carry on the legacy of Pride Rock's greatest villain. Disney employs classic misdirection, encouraging viewers to form conclusions based on visual evidence without spelling out the relationship. These striking physical parallels are reinforced by character dialogue that further drives us toward assumption. Throughout the movie, Zira constantly reinforces this connection. She refers to Kovu as the chosen one and Scar's heir, drilling into him that his destiny is to kill Simba and reclaim the Pride Lands. Her obsession with training Kovu to fulfill what she sees as his birthright raises questions. Why choose this particular cub for such an important mission unless he shared Scar's bloodline? The Pride's collective response to Kovu speaks volumes about the power of these visual associations. When Simba first encounters the grown-up Kovu, fear and suspicion flash across his face as he sees what appears to be Scar reborn. The entire Pride treats Kovu with wary distance, whispering about him and casting suspicious glances his way. They've prejudged him based on his appearance, creating an atmosphere of distrust that follows him throughout the narrative. Disney meticulously constructs this presumption of heritage. They give Kovu Scar's physical traits, have characters reference him as Scar's heir, and show everyone reacting to him with suspicion because of his supposed parentage. The visual and narrative bait works brilliantly. Most viewers naturally conclude Kovu must be Scar's biological son without questioning the assumption. But here's where the story becomes more complex. These parallels might actually be an elaborate smokescreen rather than evidence of biological relationship, like breadcrumbs leading through a forest only to end at an unexpected destination. These design choices could be setting up a more nuanced truth. Subtle clues throughout the film suggest Kovu might not actually be Scar's son. Most viewers miss these details on first watch, already convinced by the obvious visual similarities. But certain dialogue choices and character interactions reveal small inconsistencies in the apparent narrative. The most significant clue comes from Zira herself. Despite all her talk about Kovu being the chosen one and Scar's heir, she never explicitly calls him Scar's son. In Disney storytelling, word choice is deliberate. If the writers wanted absolute certainty about Kovu's parentage, why not have Zira state it directly? Her carefully crafted phrasing suggests layers to Kovu's identity beyond what meets the eye, a classic Disney twist hiding in plain sight. The answer was right in front of us all along, buried in Zira's precise language and a few easily missed lines of dialogue. When you really listen to what she says about Kovu throughout the movie, you'll notice something that changes our entire understanding of the Lion King universe. The pieces of this puzzle are scattered throughout the film, waiting for us to connect them. Let's examine one of the most revealing scenes in the movie, when Zira is talking to her pride about their plan for revenge. During this conversation, she specifically tells Kovu, "Scar took you in, not Scar fathered you, or your father Scar." This phrase completely undermines what most viewers assume about Kovu's parentage. "Took you in" specifically indicates adoption or fostering, not a biological relationship. This tiny yet crucial phrase serves as our first major clue that Kovu and Scar share no blood relation whatsoever. Disney's writing team chose their words with incredible precision in this film. When Zira speaks to her other cubs, she refers to Nuka as "my oldest son" and Vitani as "my daughter," establishing clear biological connections. But with Kovu, she never once uses the possessive "my son" when talking about him. Instead, she exclusively uses terms like the chosen one, or references him as Scar's heir. This careful distinction in how she addresses each cub creates a pattern that's too consistent to be accidental. This revelation often shocks viewers who've spent years assuming Kovu was Scar's biological son. The film deliberately plays with our expectations, allowing us to make assumptions while carefully planting evidence that contradicts them. For many fans, discovering this truth completely transforms how they view the entire story and Zira's motivations. The dialogue patterns build toward the most definitive evidence, a statement from someone who would absolutely know the truth about the family's relationships. In one of his jealous tirades, Nuka explicitly complains that Kovu isn't even Scar's son, yet was still chosen to be the next king. This isn't subtle foreshadowing or a hint, it's a direct statement that confirms what Zira's careful language has been suggesting all along. The film's directors have acknowledged in interviews that they intentionally left Kovu's parentage ambiguous. According to production notes, they wanted the focus to remain on the Romeo and Juliet inspired love story between Kovu and Kiara, rather than getting bogged down in family tree details. However, they made sure to include just enough dialogue clues for attentive viewers to piece together the truth. This revelation recontextualizes Zira's obsession with Kovu entirely. Her fixation on training him as Scar's successor becomes more calculated and manipulative. She's not merely preparing a son to fulfill his birthright, she's molding an unrelated cub into a weapon of revenge. This makes her character significantly more complex and her actions more deliberately sinister. The subtitles in the movie provide additional confirmation of this theory. Throughout the film, whenever Zira refers to Kovu, she consistently avoids any language that would establish a direct biological connection. In a film where family relationships drive the entire plot, the writers wouldn't accidentally omit clear statements about Kovu's parentage if he truly was Scar's biological son. So if Kovu isn't Scar's son, and the evidence strongly suggests he isn't, then who is his real father? The movie never directly answers this question, but we can start narrowing down the possibilities by examining the timeline of events. Kovu born, and which male lions were present in or around the Pride Lands during that period? The timing of Kovu's birth creates a massive problem that nobody talks about, a ticking clock hidden in the narrative that unravels Zira's entire story. If we look closely at the events after Scar's death, we see baby Kiara's presentation ceremony happening just months later, but Kovu is already a young cub by then. How could Scar possibly be his father when the timeline shows Kovu was born right around or even after Scar's death? This creates an impossible situation that completely contradicts Zira's story about Scar taking him in. When we carefully examine Lion King 2, we can see that Kovu appears as a very young cub in the early scenes. The film opens with Kiara's presentation ceremony, which according to the directors takes place only a few months after Simba defeated Scar. Remember that iconic opening scene with baby Kiara held high on Pride Rock? By the time Kiara is allowed to venture out alone, the "you'll be fine" scene where Simba nervously watches her leave. She meets Kovu, who's already walking and talking. This timeline creates a fundamental problem for Scar's paternity because lion gestation periods last about 3 to 4 months. If Kovu was conceived during Scar's reign, he would have been born around Scar's death or shortly after. In that case, Scar could never have chosen Kovu as his successor or taken him in, as Zira specifically claims in the Pride Lands confrontation scene. The first Lion King shows that Scar's reign lasted several years. The Pride Lands became barren, the herds left, and Simba grew from a cub into a full adult. During this period, Kovu had to be conceived, but by whom? If we accept that Kovu couldn't have been raised by Scar for any meaningful time, Zira's entire story collapses. What male lions were even present during Scar's reign? Who could be Kovu's father? Our options are limited. Scar himself, with the timing problems we've established, the hyenas, biologically impossible, or other male lions barely shown in Scar's pride. In nature, most prides have only 1 or 2 mature males, not multiple options. Looking at who was in the Pride Lands before Scar's takeover, one significant male lion stands out: Mufasa. If Kovu was conceived before Mufasa's death, the timing would perfectly align for him to be born around around when the first movie ends. This revelation transforms our understanding of Kovu. As Mufasa's son, he would be Simba's half-brother, royal blood flowing through his veins unknowingly. This explains why Zira fabricated the story about him being Scar's chosen one. The timeline evidence supports this theory. Mufasa died when Simba was still young. Several years passed while Simba matured in the jungle. If Kovu was conceived early in Scar's reign or by Mufasa before his death, he would appear exactly as we see him in Lion King 2, slightly younger than Kiara, but still a cub. This theory also explains Kovu's inherent traits. Despite Zira's conditioning, he naturally displays compassion, leadership, and courage, characteristics associated with Mufasa, not Scar. His true heritage persistently emerges despite his hateful upbringing. When we connect this timeline evidence with what the dialogue tells us, Zira never directly calling Kovu Scar's son and Nuka explicitly stating Kovu isn't Scar's son, the pieces align. The timing conflict supports our earlier dialogue clues, revealing that Kovu indeed has royal blood, but not from the lineage everyone assumes. Royal blood flows through Kovu's veins, but what if the physical evidence has been staring us in the face the entire time? The animators left behind visual breadcrumbs that most fans completely missed. Deliberate design choices that whisper the truth about Kovu's parentage when you know exactly what to look for. Beyond the superficial dark coat that made us jump to conclusions, Kovu's physique tells a completely different story. Look closely at Kovu's body structure next time you watch the movie. Notice how his frame is built for power and majesty, with broad shoulders and a strong chest, traits distinctly reminiscent of Mufasa's impressive build. This isn't coincidental. While his coloration may echo Scar's darker palette, his underlying physical structure mirrors the royal bloodline in ways that become obvious once you're searching for them. Whereas Scar was lanky and angular, Kovu possesses that powerful presence that made Mufasa such an imposing king. When Kovu reaches young adulthood, his mane begins growing in a pattern that resembles Mufasa's, full and majestic rather than thin and scraggly like Scar's. This mane unfurls like a royal banner, gradually revealing its true colors, a visual cue the animators deliberately chose instead of mimicking Scar's sparse crown. The same majestic silhouette that defined Mufasa gradually emerges in Kovu's developing profile. The physical resemblance extends beyond static features into movement and sound. Disney Animation meticulously crafts character movement and body language. Kovu's natural gait has that same regal quality that defined Mufasa and Simba. Head held high, shoulders back, confident strides. This contrasts sharply with Scar's distinctive slink and slouch. His roar carries the same deep, resonant quality that characterized Mufasa's commanding call, a stark difference from Scar's higher-pitched, scratchy voice. These audio cues create subconscious connections between characters, aligning Kovu firmly with the royal line. In moments of gentleness, particularly those with Kiara, Kovu's expressions soften into something remarkably similar to the warm, noble countenance that Mufasa displayed with Simba. His eyes, though green like Scar's, open wide with the same innocent wonder and compassion that characterized Mufasa. The mask of villainy Zira imposed never quite fits, constantly slipping to reveal the true nobility beneath. The most compelling evidence comes from watching Kovu's natural instincts emerge throughout the film. Despite years of conditioning, his protective nature surfaces effortlessly. When danger threatens, his immediate reaction isn't self-preservation like Scar's, but protection of others. The same instinctive response that made Mufasa rush into the gorge to save Simba. This inherent nobility comes from his genetic heritage, something Zira could never train into him. Rafiki's reaction to Kovu during the final blessing ceremony reveals subtle recognition, as though seeing something familiar in Kovu that he once saw in Mufasa. The wise man drill doesn't merely perform a ceremony, he acknowledges Kovu's rightful place in the circle, silently confirming the young lion's true lineage. The transformation Kovu undergoes is a return to his natural state. His struggle isn't overcoming inherited evil tendency, but breaking free from the false identity constructed for him. This explains why his evolution feels so natural and complete. He's reclaiming his true nature, not changing it. Even Simba's eventual acceptance takes on new meaning through this lens. Beyond forgiveness, Simba subconsciously recognizes something of his father in this young lion. Their reconciliation carries emotional weight that transcends the narrative of forgiveness. It feels like a family reunion, the circle of life completing itself in unexpected ways. Zira's master plan was far more sinister than anyone suspected. The biggest secret of The Lion King 2 wasn't just who Kovu's father might be, but what Zira knew about his bloodline and how she manipulated this information to create the perfect weapon against Simba. Her deception goes deeper than anyone suspected, and the truth about Kovu's parentage will make you question everything you thought you understood about Zira's motivation. I believe Zira was originally one of Mufasa's loyal lionesses during his reign, likely with a special relationship with the king himself. When Mufasa died and Scar seized power, Zira found herself pregnant with the former king's cub. Rather than revealing this truth, she recognized an extraordinary opportunity. With Simba believed dead and Scar in power, her unborn cub carried legitimate royal blood, a direct connection to the throne. She pledged her loyalty to Scar and strategically positioned her soon-to-be-born cub as Scar's chosen one. Her devotion was never about love for Scar. It was about power and ensuring her son would one day rule Pride Rock. This revelation explains Zira's willingness to risk everything for a cub that wasn't even Scar's biological son. She chose Kovu because he was already destined for greatness through his bloodline. Like a sculptor molding clay into the perfect deception, she crafted an illusion of lineage, manipulating Scar into believing this cub was special enough to be his successor. Nuka's constant bitterness now makes perfect sense. As Scar's actual biological son, he was cruelly passed over for a cub with no blood relation to his father, transforming him from a petty, whining character into a tragic figure robbed of his birthright. The theory creates intriguing possibilities for Kiara and Kovu's relationship. If Kovu is Mufasa's son, that would technically make him Simba's half-brother. This connection might explain why Disney carefully avoided confirming Kovu's parentage directly, leaving certain family relationships deliberately ambiguous. A more plausible scenario supports our theory while preserving the integrity of the love story. What if Kovu is the son of Mufasa and a different lioness, not Sarabi? In lion prides, the dominant male often fathers cubs with multiple females. Kovu would be Simba's half-brother, but not directly related to Kiara, who comes from Simba and Nala's line. They would share a grandfather, Mufasa, but not be uncle and niece, a connection that Disney could comfortably leave unaddressed. This theory adds extraordinary depth to Zira's character as a brilliant strategist who recognized that raising Mufasa's son as Scar's chosen heir created the perfect weapon. Kovu had legitimate royal blood that would give him an innate connection to the Pride Lands and potentially even win over Simba's loyalists. By disguising him as Scar's protege, she created a cub who could appeal to both factions, the perfect candidate to unite the Pride under her influence once Simba was eliminated. Kovu's natural connection to the Pride Lands suddenly makes sense. His comfort there was his birthright calling him home. His resistance to Zira's violent plans was Mufasa's nobility asserting itself through his bloodline. The story becomes about a prince discovering his true identity after years of manipulation. The entire narrative of Lion King 2 transforms through this lens. It becomes about the reunification of Mufasa's divided bloodline. The outsiders weren't just Scar's followers. They were lions who carried Mufasa's legacy without knowing it. When the prides unite at the film's conclusion, it represents the healing of a royal family torn apart by Scar's betrayal years earlier. And now, as we've pieced together all these hidden clues Disney left for us, what do we discover? A story far richer than we initially thought. A profound narrative about finding your true identity despite others trying to shape you into something you're not. The revelation of Kovu as Mufasa's son transforms the ending completely. When the prides unite, Mufasa's scattered legacy finally comes together. The circle of life completes as his bloodline reunites, with no character aware of this deeper significance. How does this change how you see Pride Rock? Rewatch Lion King 2 with fresh eyes. Disney's brilliance lies in layers that take decades to fully uncover.